what was the most difficult thing when you know all this and you've seen someone's pain and either they weren't willing to apply it, you saw them too late? Has there been someone in your life that you're like, I had all these tools to help them with, but they weren't ready to receive, or that it wasn't accessible at that time for them? Has there been that? Or have you found that you've always found a way to get through? And not even you personally, I mean, in your personal life too.
Yeah. I first of all I agree with what Jacques told you, which is, dealing with the loss of someone you care about is probably the most difficult thing of all. I would say maybe as a child, seeing the level of frustration between my parents, I had 4 different fathers, and watching them kind of, accept whatever life gave them it's why a lot of my drive came about, is seeing my fathers be berated by my mother, who I love dearly, and just watching them break down. Like, probably the single most painful event of my life, but also shaped me in such a beautiful way, was when I was 11 years old. We had no money for food, and it was Thanksgiving, which in America is a big holiday feast. And so we'd been without food before. We'd have crackers and butter, and we survived, but we weren't going to have a Thanksgiving feast. And there was a knock at the door, and I go to the door, and there's this giant guy there with groceries in each hand, and he had a pot beside him on the ground with an uncooked turkey. And I said, who are you here for? He goes, I'd like to speak to your father. And my mom and dad were yelling at each other, saying things that you can never take back. And I'm trying to make sure my younger brother and sister, they're 5 and 7 years younger, wouldn't hear any of this. And that day changed my life, because I thought it was going to be the most exciting day. Dad, go to the front. What is it? I said, it's for you. You answered. No, it's for you. And I remember we opened the door, and I was just so excited to see my father be happy. Like, we're going to have a feast. This is going to be incredible. And he got angry. And he's like, we don't accept charity. He went to slam the door in the man's face, and the man's foot was there, so it bounced off his foot. He still opened the groceries. He's like, sir, I'm just the delivery guy. He said, it's not charity. Everybody has a tough time. Someone bought this, and they're sending it to you as a gift. And my father said, we don't take charity. He goes to close the door again. This time the guy's shoulder was there also, so it bounced off again. And then I was standing right there, and there's this moment I'll never forget where this man looked at my father, and he looked at me and he said, sir, don't let your ego make your family suffer. And the veins on my dad's face, on the side of his neck, I'll never forget, they bulged, like his face turned red. I thought I was going to punch him in the face. And then there's this moment, my dad's shoulders dropped. He took the groceries, slammed the door, didn't say thank you, and stormed off. And I remember thinking, like, how come he's not happy? You talk about pain. It's like, I love my father so much. And there's basically 3 decisions that I think everybody makes in their life, that whether they're aware of it or not, moment to moment. I figured this out afterwards because I was so obsessed with what's wrong, because he eventually left our family. And that was the most painful thing I ever had. So it's like feeling like I failed, I blame myself, like, why couldn't I get through to my father? I was 11 years old. But later on, it helped me understand the 3 decisions are: first, you got to decide what to focus on. Every moment of your life, there's something grabbing your focus, and you don't experience life, you experience the part of life you focus on. Right? What's wrong is always available. So is what's right. Right? And there are different kinds of focus. And my dad's focus that day was really on what he hadn't done. And I know that because he kept muttering it. He hadn't taken care of his family. There's no money for Thanksgiving. Somebody had to give us charity. And then the second decision you make about once you focus on something is, what does it mean? Is this the end or the beginning? If you think it's the end of a relationship, you're going to behave different than it's the beginning, right? My dad's meaning was that he was worthless. And so then the third decision is, what do I do? Which, whatever meaning you come up with creates the emotions, which affects what you do. And what he decided to do was leave our family. But for me, it was like, this is amazing. I mean, we haven't having Thanksgiving. This is incredible. We got food. What a concept. And then the meaning, though, is what changed my whole life, which was, wow, strangers care. That completely changed my life. That painful experience, I couldn't deny that somebody who wanted no credit delivered this food to my family. And so what I decided to do is say, someday I'm going to do this for another family. So when I was 17, I had 2 families, and it was a euphoric experience. I went in jeans and a t-shirt. I didn't go like the delivery guy, but I wanted to see the face of the people. And then next year was 4 people, and then it was 8. And my thing was doubling. And I had a little company, and then I got to 1 million people a year, and then I got to 4 million people a year. Then when I was doing Money Master the Game, I'm interviewing these billionaires, Jay, and I'm watching Congress cut food stamps. It's now called the SNAP program, by, I think it was $6 billion. So every family that actually needs food, and my family was one of those back then, they all have to come up with a week's worth of food out of every month. So I was like, I called my team and I said, how many people have I fed in my lifetime? I didn't know there was 42 million meals. I was like, this is pretty cool. And I was like, what if I fed 50 million people, like my entire lifetime in 1 year? And then I was like, what if I did 100 million? What if I fed 1 billion people in 10 years? So that was 7 years ago. We're at 850 million meals, right? And I'm going to hit the billion earlier than what I promised and targeted. And then I've got a sustainable approach. But I tell you that because my worst day was my best day. The most painful day, the day where I felt like I do the least, where I felt impotent, led me to have new understandings, new skills, new capacities, new drives, new hunger. I mean, would I really be feeding 100 million people a year, 100 million meals a year if I was well fed as a child? Probably not. You know, I'd love to believe I'm such a perfect person, but no, I just know what suffering feels like. So I don't want anybody else to suffer, you know? So I think sometimes the suffering experiences of our life, if we don't let them crush us, we let them drive us, they actually become the best day in your life. And taking your worst day and making your best day is a beautiful target for anybody.
That is just, it's magical even hearing it.
It's magical experiencing it. It changed my life.
Yeah, exactly. I can only imagine, like, just hearing it, I'm just, you know, it's such a beautiful visual. So to live it is just, you know, on the other end of that. Thank you for sharing that so much. It's such it's so profound and so wonderful with the question
it's that you see. It's where you see there's grace in life too. It's like, if you can, like, I used to think in the early days, because my mom was beautiful. She was the most influential person in my life. And yet she also, when she drank alcohol and took, you know, prescription medication, she got crazy. So she smashed my head against the wall until I bled, or feed me liquid soap. And I never told anybody about this when she was alive, but I had this group of young kids that I could see, a tall white guy who seems to be quite successful. You know, what does he know? So I told him the whole story. But out of all that, it's like, if my mom had been the mother I wanted her to be, I'd probably not be the man I'm proud to be. Like, I had to grow. I had to become a practical psychologist at 11 to manage her so that my brother and sister weren't messed up. And it's like, there's grace in everything. And I always think it's like, it's our job to realize that life's happening for us, not to us, and to find how it's happening for us. That's our job. If we do that, then we have a magical life. If we don't, but if your energy's low and you're exhausted, then you don't find those empowering meanings. You know, that's why, to me, you can't separate the mind and the body. You got to feed the mind and strengthen the body on a daily basis in some way. And if you do that, life can be pretty miraculous.
And I did that for too long. I can actually relate to that. And it was my wife that turned me on to the body, because I was one of those people that focused on the mind and the spirit. And as I shared with you earlier, ignored the body. Because I thought, well, I'm young, I've always been healthy, I don't really know what physical health looks like. And then my wife is a nutrition, a dietitianist, an Ayurvedic health counselor. She comes into my life and she's just like, you need to do this. You need to change this in your diet. And I'm thinking, why are you asking me to change? But it was so fascinating to me because it's exactly what you just said. You can't disconnect the two. And going on that, you said focus and mood about your father. You have a whole section in here dedicated to focus and mood. Walk us through that, because what you just explained to us is the emotional focus and mood of your father. But here you're talking about how the physicality of focus and mood can affect us.
They go together. I'll give you an example of how powerful they are for the psychological side. Right now, you know, out of COVID, so many people have been shut down in a terrible place. And, you know, I'm sure you've seen that drug overdoses are the largest they've ever been in history. It was over 100,000 people last year. Suicides, 1 out of 4 kids under the age of 30, according to the CDC, whether they're accurate or not, I don't know, have considered suicide sometime in the last 2 years. Because we all need a compelling future. We need something to look forward to. So Stanford came to me, and their genetics lab has been doing research on depression. And what they found was that by doing meta studies, is only 40% of the people who go in for therapy, who they get drugs and therapy together usually, only 40% make any improvement. 60% don't improve at all. That's not a lot more than what you can get on some placebos. And so they approached me and said, a couple of people went through one of your programs. One was clinically depressed. They're not anymore. But we don't have any science on this. Would you be willing to let us do a science test? And I said, sure. So they came out to the State with Destiny seminar I do, which helps people to change their values and belief structures. I don't tell them what they need to be, but they figure out what it needs to be. And it changes the way you perceive life, the way you experience life, how you feel, what you do. It's a rewiring of your model of the world, basically, in 6 days. And so they said, we're going to model this after the greatest breakthrough they found in science and no one able to follow up on. About 2 years ago, Johns Hopkins did a study on depression. And they gave people psilocybin, right, which comes from magic mushrooms. And they did therapy for 30 days. And at the end of it, 53% of the people were depression free 30 days later. Never happened. Like when we say 40% are helped, the average amount of help is 50% less depressed, right? That's what the average is. Some people completely turn around, some people don't. In this one, 53% of the people. So it's 4 times the result of any drug that ever been done. But unfortunately, psilocybin's not legal, so they're still working on that. And they said, we're going to copy that exact study. And we're going to have a group that they compared to, which didn't go to the seminar. The comparison group is going to do gratitude journaling and so forth, because positive psychology talks about that. And they said that's probably what this seminar does, is just positive thinking. Well, the cool thing was when they came out, the results were so amazing at Stanford that they went and had 2 new additional double-blind people do the research because it just seemed so ridiculous. At the end of the first week, 63% of people had no depression symptoms. At the end of 6 weeks, it can increase through time. 100% of the people had no depression symptoms. 19% of the people had suicidal ideation. 0 had suicidal ideation. It blows away any study. It just came out. It's coming out next week in the Psychiatric Journal, which is Journal of American Medical Association, Psychiatric Journal are the 2 top journals in the field. They can't even believe it. So they're going to do more. And the actual scientific article says this is more powerful than any drug therapy or any forms of normal therapy combined. And what are we doing? We're getting people to change basically those 3 questions to some extent, because your values control what you focus on. If you're security driven and you're here down in my basement right now, you're like, where's the exit, right? You came down a slide, like, how do I get out of here, right? If you're adventure driven, you don't care. You don't even know where it is. So your focus is controlled by your values and your belief systems, right? The meaning of things is controlled by your belief systems. So those 3 decision-making things, what I'm going to focus on, what does it mean, what I'm going to do, shift. And one good example of this, Jay, is, and maybe your audience can relate to this, is that we just took 3 patterns. So let's say focus, most people have a focus either on what they have or what's missing. Mm-hmm. We all do both. Mm-hmm. But what do you think most people focus on more often? What they have or what's missing?
What's missing.
That's right. Now, even achievers do that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like somebody who's not successful. It's one of the reasons you see these achievers that no matter what they do, it's never enough. Because think about it, if you're always focusing what's missing from your life, how can you sustain happiness? Mm-hmm. It's software that will not allow that. Mm-hmm. You'll feel happy for a little moment and then you'll notice it's missing again. What do you think's more often people focus on, what they can control or can't control?
What they can't control.
Yeah. In my seminars, it's can control. That's why they go. I want to learn how to take control of my body or my finances or my business, whatever it is. So it's the opposite. But the average person, it's what they can't control. And with COVID, there's so much you can't control around you that people really sunk in that. Well, how's someone going to feel? Just everyone think about it. If you're constantly focused on what's missing from your life and what you can't control. And then I'll add one more. Do you focus more on the past, the present, or the future? We all do all 3, but we tend to have one we focus more on. Mm-hmm. Where do you think more people focus?
Past.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And achievers focus on the future, and happy people on the present. So that, if you're going to be an achiever, the ideal is the present, so you experience it, anticipating the future, so you can shape your life, right? Yeah. But the past you can't change. So I ask people in seminars, you got stadium 15, 20,000 people, and I'll say, how many of you know somebody that takes antidepressants and they're still depressed? And 80% of the room raised their hand saying they know somebody.
Wow.
Well, how come? Because all antidepressants do is numb you so that you're less intense, but they don't deal with the source of the problem, which is you're constantly seeing what's missing. And it doesn't matter whether you're successful or not. That's why there are these people that have been wealthy and take their own life. They see what's missing. They focus on all the things they can't control. There's plenty we can't control, but there's plenty we can influence and plenty we can't control. And just a couple of changes like that completely change someone's life. And so those changes in the beliefs and values change what they look moment to moment, change their experience of life. They're no longer depressed. Yeah.
The biggest thing that I learned from that, apart from all the incredible stuff you said, is I didn't think about security once when we came down the slide. That's either because I trust you a lot and I'm with you. If it was someone else telling me to get down the slide, I don't know if I would have done it. But now I'm like going, oh, wait a minute, we're underwater. now I'm starting to have all the thoughts.
That's right.
That's incredible. Those questions are fascinating to me. And you were saying that the people that come to your seminars are people that are the opposite. And I think the same of the people that listen to this podcast.
Sure.
They're choosing to listen to this podcast
because they want to take charge
over just watching a show or
binge
watching another series. They're here trying to take charge.